What's up, everyone? This is LeetCode 102, binary tree level order traversal. So we're given the root of a binary tree, right? For example, when we're given this 3 as the root. We have to return the level order traversal of its node values, i.e. from left to right, level by level. So basically, we have to return the nodes in a list from left to right, level by level. Now, if you'll notice in the output, right, every level is basically its own list, right? And all those lists are wrapped in a list itself. So we're returning a list of lists, really. That's how we're going to do this, okay? So generally, right, when you have a problem where you need to go level by level, what are we going to use? We're going to use BFS, right? We wouldn't use DFS, it doesn't make sense. And generally, when you use BFS on a tree, you use a queue, right, to approach it, generally speaking. Maybe there's some problems where you don't, but this problem, for example, definitely a queue would be useful, right? So we can handle all the nodes for a particular level. Okay, now before we start, let's notice our constraints down here. It's possible that we can have 0 nodes in the tree, right? And that'd be like example 3. So let's just handle the edge case really quick. If we don't have a root node, we can just return an empty list, okay? Just handle that edge case, because that is a possibility. So the way we're going to do this in terms of the queue, right, is first of all, we're going to start with the root node, right? And let's put that in a queue, okay? We're going to put that in a queue, okay? And we're going to handle that, right? And append its child nodes. So we're going to have 9 and 20, right? After we handle the 3. And when we're done handling the 3, right, we have our, let's just say we have like an answer array. And in this list, right, we would append the first level, which would be the 3, right? Now I want to talk about something really quick. 20 has child nodes, but 9 doesn't. Let's say 9 did have child nodes, right? How would we process 9? What do we do with the child nodes after we process 9, right? But we'd have to put it into the list into the queue as well, right? So we would have something like, let me delete this part up here just to not confuse you. So we're handling 9 and 20. Let's say 9 had child nodes of 1 and 2. We would process 9, right? Right? And let's just say we have like a temporary array. And this is, the temporary array is what gets put into answer array. So we would handle 9, right? Okay. So we need to handle 20, obviously, but we don't want to handle 1 and 2, right? Because if 9 had child nodes 1 and 2, that would be a different level. So how do we basically only handle 9 and only handle 20? Yet we also have other stuff in the queue. So how are we gonna basically not touch or process these nodes, right? The way we do that is basically before we start on a level, right? Before we handle this 9 and before we handle this 20, we're going to have a for loop that takes the length of the queue, right? In this case, it'd be 2. And that's how many times we would handle the nodes, right? So even, let's say we handle 9 and we add 1 and 2. It doesn't matter because we handle 9, we're going to handle 20, and then we're done. The temporary array basically have 2 nodes, right? And we would handle these 2. And we wouldn't do anything else, no matter if there's other stuff in the queue. So we would basically be done, right? We handled 2 nodes, put that in the queue, and let's move on. Okay, now we have to handle, and by the way, we handled the 20, so technically this would also have 15 and 7. So none of these we only handled 9 and 20, and none of the child nodes of those 2 nodes got handled, right? Which is great because we don't want that in our, like in this sub list here, right? Obviously 9 doesn't have child nodes. I'm just using as an example. What would you do if you had child nodes here and here, but you only want to handle these 2, right? You don't want to handle the child nodes. The way to do that is basically before you start doing anything, we're going to take the length of the queue, and that's how many times we need to iterate. Because remember, we're using a queue, right? First in, first out, right? So if we have 9, 20, and our length is 2 of how many nodes we need to process, we're going to process the 9 and the 20 before any of the other ones. So we don't have to worry. And so that's basically how we handle it level by level, okay? Like kind of at a basic level. Okay, so let's code this up and I'll make sure to re-explain things in case it gets a bit confusing, but I think like once you grasp this problem a little bit, it's really kind of on the easier side of the mediums, personally. It's not too hard. So remember, we're going to start with the root node, right? And we're going to put that in the queue. Okay. For example, we put the 3 in the queue. Okay. Our answer array is basically our list, and this answer list is going to contain the list of every level. That makes sense, right? And again, we need to return this at the end, so let's just do that here. And then here, basically, remember what I said. While something's in the queue, we have stuff to do, okay? Now, given that there's stuff to do in the queue, remember what I said? We need to take how many nodes in the queue we want to process. So first of all, because remember, this particular node that we're going to handle, or this particular queue so far that we have to handle, we could end up expanding it because we would handle a node and add child nodes to the queue. So we need to basically set how many nodes are in the queue. Let's process those and only those. So if we add more nodes to the queue later, we don't want to handle those. And the way to do that is, again, we just want to take the length of the queue before we do anything. Okay. And here we're going to basically make a variable called level. You can call it temporary. I'm just going to call it level just so you kind of understand what it represents. But we're going to make a list called level. Okay. So right now we have our queue, right? And we need to handle everything basically this many times, okay? That's what our for loop is for. So we're going to pop, obviously, because we're in a queue, right? So we're going to say node is equal to queue.pop left, right? And this node that we popped from the queue, like remember when we have like, remember the example I gave you? Like if we had like a 9 and a 20 in our queue, we only want to handle these two nodes, right? So we're going to pop the 9, we're going to add that to our level, we're going to pop the 20, we're going to add that to our level, and we want to append that to answer, right? Because we do want these together as a list inside the overall list. But when we pop and add these, the 9 and the 20, when we take that away from the queue and put that in its own level, in like its own quote-unquote level list, we also need to make sure we add the child nodes to the queue because we want to process those as well, right? So we're going to pop from the queue and we're going to set that to node, okay? And we want to append node to level, okay? But before we move on, we need to add child nodes to the queue, okay, as well. So, oh, sorry, we're going to say, so we have the level, we're going to append that to, or to the level, we're going to append the node value, okay? For example, if we have a 9, we're going to append the 9 to the level. Later on, we're going to append the 20. Okay, so let's say we're at this 9. Remember what I said? Let's say it had child nodes 1 and 2. We want to add those to the queue as well. So we're going to say if node.left, right? We're going to say queue.append node.left, right? If it has a right child node, we're going to say if node.right, queue.append node.right. Okay. And sorry, this should be also in the for loop. This is indented really strangely. My bad. So we're going to keep doing that. Okay. And when we exit this for loop, we're basically done with the level, so we can append the level. Okay. Now, this is basically the entire code. It's pretty simple. Okay. So, I'm going to use an example. We're going to use example 1. Sorry, I called my queue Q, not. I spelled it. The queue is declared with an actual letter, not the word up here. So sorry about that. Sorry about this video being a little bit long, by the way, because it's really not a hard problem, but just in case you're confused, I'm just being over-explanatory. I usually do that in my videos. So for example, we have this 3, right? Let's say our queue is this, right? And let's say level is this, and answer is this. Okay, so, okay, while something's in the queue, right? Okay, well, before we handle anything, what's our length of our queue? It's 1. Okay, so we're going to say, we're going to pop this 3 from the queue, right? So our node is is basically this node 3, right? And we're going to append this 3 to level, right? Does it have child nodes? Yes, 9 and 20. So let's add that to the queue, right? We exit the for loop because, again, there's only one node we initially wanted to handle. And we append level to answer. So we have something like that. Okay. So now let's start over. We have 9 and 20. Okay, how many nodes? Before we do anything, what's the length of queue, right, for our for loop? We only have to go twice, right, because we have to handle this 9 and this 20. So let's pop the 9, right? Does it have child nodes? No. So we don't have to worry about that. So let's, before we even check if it has child nodes, we need to append this value 9 to the level, right? So we're going to say 9. And again, remember we popped this 9, so it's actually technically not in the queue anymore. Okay. Let's move on, right? Because we have to remember we have to handle 2 nodes because of our for loop. So we pop this 20. Okay. Okay. Level.append. So we put 20 in the level. So we put this here. Okay. Does it have left and right child nodes? Yes, it has 15 and 7. So let's add that to the queue. Okay. I'm sorry, this node should be 20. Okay. We exit the for loop because we handled the 2 nodes we needed to. Answer.append level. So we would append this list 9 and 20. Okay. Okay. While queue, right? Because again, our queue still has stuff in it. Before we do anything, right, we need to basically set the range. What's the length for the for loop, right? The length of queue is 2, right? Because we want to handle 15 and 7 for that particular level. Those are the only 2 nodes. So, yeah. So node q.pop left, or yeah, q.pop left. So we'd get 15, right? And again, that get popped from the queue. We add that to the level. So again, our level would be empty initially. And we would add 15. Okay. Does it have child nodes? No, it doesn't. So back up, right? We still have stuff to handle because we're still in the for loop. So let's pop the next thing from the queue, which would be a 7. Okay. So node would be 7. Okay. Let's append that to level. Boom. Okay. Does it have child nodes on the left and the right? No, it doesn't. So it doesn't matter. We have the for loop, answer.append level, which level is 15 and 7. 15 and 7. So yeah, and that's what we should get, right? So, I mean, this example 1 is really simple. But like if this had child nodes, maybe, you know, it'd be maybe if you're confused, maybe be a little bit easier to understand. I mean, you could just draw that on your own and go through the code that way if you're still confused. But yeah, I hope this helped. I mean, it's really not that hard, right? You're just basically using the queue right, to start with the root node, and you're using this level here to basically gather up the nodes from the particular level, and at the end append that to the answer array. And again, this for loop here really just sets the length of how many, because you can add child nodes to the queue and it would be expanding, right? So this for loop here basically just caps out how many nodes do you actually want to handle, right? Because if let's say a level has 2 nodes, but there's like 4 child nodes because those 2 nodes both have 2 child nodes. So you have 2 nodes. The for loop basically makes you handle those 2 nodes, so that if you have stuff left over in the queue, once you add the child nodes, you don't handle those for that particular level, right? That's all the for loop is for. But anyways, I hope this helped, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace out. Sorry for a long video.